film historian who has authored 3 books in the Turner Classic Movie Library, The Essential Directors, Dynamic Dames, and Must-See Sci-Fi. Her contributions as a writer and researcher include the books Warner Brothers' 100 Years of Storytelling, Natalie Wood Reflections on a Legendary Life, Grace Kelly, Hollywood Dream Girl, and the HBO Amblin documentary Natalie Wood, What Remains Behind. She has appeared on TCM, CNN, and too many podcasts to mention. So thank you so much for being here, Sloan. Let me introduce Sloan. Thank you so much.
Woo!
Thank you. Happy Sunday morning, everybody, and welcome to the Church of Classic Movies. The topic of our sermon today, Saint Ingrid Bergman, Anastasia, or Anastasia, if you want to get technical. This historical drama, based on a true story, combines elements of mystery, melodrama, romance, and a little bit of comedy. All in all, it's a beautiful showcase for Bergman's extraordinary talent. It was a talent that had really been raising the bar for Hollywood acting ever since she was first imported from Sweden by David O. Selznick in 1939. Her performances on the screen were remarkable, but Ingrid Bergman, the individual, was even more remarkable off the screen. This was a woman who lived life on her own terms. She followed nobody's rules but her own. I have a list of a few examples here. She refused to have her name changed to something more American sounding. She resisted efforts to alter her appearance, whether it be capping her teeth or plucking her eyebrows or wearing false eyelashes. She typically ate and drank whatever she wanted, despite pressure from the industry to diet and lose weight. She rejected the Hollywood gossip machine and declined to befriend the columnists Hedda Hopper and Luella Parsons, as she was told to do. She was married but had affairs with other men, including some of her co-stars, which her husband knew about but tolerated because she was the main family breadwinner. In other words, Ingrid Bergman lived like a man. But of course, she was not a man, so she was absolutely demonized by most of the world in 1949 when she fell in love with her director, Roberto Rossellini, while making a movie in Italy. Before they could get married, she had a baby while both were still legally married to other people. It was complicated. But she received truckloads of hate mail and death threats. She was condemned by the Catholic Church, denounced by the US Senate, and effectively banned from the country. If you want to know more about the true facts of the scandal, by the way, I recommend reading her autobiography she wrote with Alan Burgess in 1980. It's called Ingrid Bergman, My Story. And it sets the record straight on a lot of misconceptions. It's a good book. So, after several years in Italy and a few good films with Rossellini, Bergman felt she'd given the improvisational Italian neorealism style her best shot, but she longed to return to the Hollywood studio style she was more comfortable with. All she needed was the perfect role. Now, according to most reports, Buddy Adler, who was head of production at 20th Century Fox at the time, saw the play Anastasia on Broadway and bought the rights with Ingrid Bergman in mind. Other reports say that Anatole Litvak insisted on Bergman when he was hired to direct the film. Now, there's some truth to those stories. However, the idea of casting Ingrid Bergman in Anastasia did not originate with either of those men. It was actually the idea of Kay Brown, David O. Selznick's former assistant. Kay Brown was the woman who had urged Selznick to bring Bergman to Hollywood in the first place. Oh, and she had also convinced Alfred Hitchcock to come to America and persuaded her boss to buy a little story called Gone with the Wind. You may have heard of that one. So Kay Brown and Ingrid Bergman were close friends, and they conspired to get Bergman in the film version of Anastasia before the studio, or the director, were involved. So when Bergman told Rossellini she was going to leave Italy to make a Hollywood movie in England, he took it fairly well. He threatened to crash his Ferrari into a tree, but he often made this threat, so it wasn't anything unusual. He even had the exact tree picked out, but he never drove into it, thankfully. Ingrid stood her ground. She went to London and Paris without her husband's approval to act in Anastasia and the film version of Tea and Sympathy. It was a decision that contributed to their divorce in 1957. But as a classic movie fan, I'm gonna say it was worth it. Anastasia was a triumph on every level. It was a box office hit, a critical success, and a personal victory for Bergman, who was finally forgiven and allowed to return to the United States, really based largely on her performance in this film. This was the most expensive film Fox had ever made outside of Hollywood, and it shows in the production value. $3.5 million, which is about $42.5 million today, was lavished on the costumes, the cinemascope photography, the music performed by a 70-piece orchestra, the set design, the food, the champagne. Every element of this movie is really impeccable. Anatol Litvak, the director, was Russian, actually born in Russia, as was the leading man, Yul Brynner. Many of the actors in the film were Russian exiles who had fled during the revolution. The composer of the score was Alfred Newman, whose parents had emigrated from Russia. You may be noticing a theme here. Because the story concerns the heir to the Russian Romanov dynasty, great pains were taken to make this movie as authentically Russian as it could possibly get without being made in Russia. It was not only a comeback for Bergman, but for the great Helen Hayes, who had been in semi-retirement for years. She was hesitant to appear on camera again, but she took the role because she wanted to work with Bergman, who had been her friend and neighbor when they both lived in Rochester, New York in the early 1940s. So, after 7.5 years away, Ingrid Bergman was finally welcomed back to America to accept her Best Actress award by the New York Film Critics Society. She didn't make it to the Oscars that year, but her old notorious pal, Cary Grant, accepted the Academy Award on her behalf. Yul Brynner also took home an Oscar that night, not for Anastasia, but for The King and I. Close enough, everybody was happy. And speaking of Brynner, we get to see him relive his past here. It's really fun. His first job at age 14 was actually singing and playing gypsy guitar in a Paris cabaret, exactly like he does. You'll see him do in this movie. Oh, and one more thing to look for, Natalie Schaefer, better known as Mrs. Howell. Be sure and watch for her. She is the crucial 1 degree of separation between Ingrid Bergman and Gilligan's Island. I'm gonna leave you with that little nugget as food for thought as we watch, and I hope you enjoy, from 1956, Anastasia.